I would like to thank you for coming to our symposium. This year is about new technologies. And we have bright scientists today talking about different topics. And as you know, we do not have any sponsorship for our symposiums, and I would like to thank you for supporting it. Our first speaker is Dr. Andy Walsh. He has a PhD in biomechanics, and he has dedicated his life to hack human talent, to enhance human performance. And he's coming from Australia. Dr. Andy Walsh.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Can you understand my accent? Good, good. I'll just start my little timer here so I make sure I don't go over for the rest of the day. I want to just thank, first and foremost, Dr. Nowzari for having me here today. I got a call to sort of support this with the presentation today, and I was really excited because our whole community has been around human performance and human factors and studying that, and we've had a privilege for many years of working with some extraordinary organisations right at the tip of elite sport, elite military, elite government, but more recently, elite surgeons, doctors, dentists, communities like that. So I want to take a chance today to maybe reflect on some of the lessons we've learned from all the previous years and how we're looking to apply that to communities such as yours. So extend the capabilities that we've learned working with some of the best talent in the world. So this is going to be more of a fun presentation, a little bit more edutainment, because I think when we talk about humans and what we really understand about how humans perform, we really haven't cracked the code of science yet. And I say yet because I think you're going to see some presentations following that really start to speak to that idea of what's possible now and what we could potentially do if we could crack through and really get to understand the nuance of what makes humans more human. So I'm going to start with the little introduction. I'm part of a group called the Liminal Collective. We're a group of scientists, performers, creatives, individuals fascinated with the very pinnacle of human factors, and our goal is to sort of expand what's possible for humanity. So take, sort of, if you like, enabling humanity's boldest endeavours, so take things that can't possibly be done today and make sure that we can support them in such a way that they can be achieved. So the scope's very broad. As I said, I'm going to start with a little bit of the history because it's a little bit more fun. So my background was the Australian Olympic Committee for many years, professional sports, professional teams back home for many, many years. And then I was brought to the States in '99 to talk about and help set up a program for the Winter Olympics for Salt Lake for 2002. That then broadened into government programs. I spent 3 years with DARPA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The final part of my training before we started working on this program was with Red Bull. So that really gave me a perspective of talent. Yes, we did a lot of fun stuff, which I'll share with you, but the reality was we had 1,000 people in sports, in about 170 different sports globally, from F1 to Premier League football to skateboarding to surfing, all best in the world at what they do. And we had about 3,000 artists, musicians, designers, filmmakers. And all those communities were interested in one thing, and that was getting better at what they do. And so what we were able to do, and we were very fortunate, was to sit around and watch and observe and learn from every one of those people on their path to success, whether as an individual or a team. But that's enough talking. This is kind of the fun stuff we used to do, but I'm going to reflect on a little bit just to get the day awake, make sure everyone in the room's awake. This is one of the last projects I had at Red Bull.
Attention,
luckily they survived, which is a good thing. I knew it. I guarantee no one came here today expecting to see that in one of these presentations. But the point is, and I'll hopefully make it relevant to everybody in the room, is that people thinking about what's possible, what's the frontier of performance in any given field, is where we like to play. And as you can see there, these two individuals come up with a potentially crazy idea, but the way we prepare and train those people to do these things applies no matter what you're doing. So I'm pretty sure nobody in this room is a wingsuiter, but even with respect to your day-to-day careers, the lessons we've learned from people like this apply very much so, and I'd like to get into that. One of the challenges we have with humans, and obviously understanding how to improve humans, is that they're so extraordinarily complex, and we don't really understand very much at all. We probably get 3 or 4 or 5%, and as I know many of the people in the medical realm in the room here, there's a lot of research on the medical side and years of tradition and history studying how to improve, how to support. But when it comes to actually training and preparation, we're very limited. And then Stephen Wiltshire here is a good example of what's sort of unknown in that space. He's able to recreate this drawing of New York City simply by flying over it for 20 minutes. And he's so accurate after he's flown over the city in 20 minutes that he can recreate this, that they actually use it and test it against Google Maps, and it's more accurate than Google Maps. Now, he slightly has on the spectrum of autism, but this goes to show what we love about this is it just shows you the capability and what's possible. And we're not even tapping 5% of that with what we know today. Part of the reason that is because we're an ancient system. The human evolutionary pipeline, if you like, is relatively short from a geological perspective in terms of the planet. But even in that period of time, we've only been able to sort of identify the base elements of performance, and they sort of are reflective of how we operated for the last couple of 100,000 years. So we've got an extraordinarily complex system. We have a system that's based on a sort of far more traditional environment in terms of practice and performance. So that means we have to defer in my world, no matter how complex it may look from a performance perspective. When we're trying to help people really hit that pinnacle of what they're trying to achieve, we have to go back to the very fundamentals. Because if we anchor in the fundamentals, then we can move forward. So we use performance models. We try to think about what it takes to be extraordinary in any given field. In this case, it's very general, and the aggregate of talent around the side and these critical success factors matches that. So it's a generic model, but if it was, say, a surgeon or a dentist, you would put that person or team in the middle. You would identify all those elements that are critical to performance in terms of making them and improving them, and then you start to pick them apart one by one. It's very crude, but in the world of human factors, this is about as advanced as it gets. So we're fascinated with talent. We want to know, and including communities like yours, how you do what you do at such a high level, because everybody's got something to offer and something to learn. And the more we spread our information across dynamic systems and dynamic communities, the better we learn and understand. This is obviously very familiar to many of you in the room. And as I said before, we have to start with the basics. The Yerkes-Dodson curve, the stress-arousal curve, anxiety curve, whatever you like to call it. Anchored in the autonomic nervous system, which is a fight or flight response, which is, again, an ancient mechanism. And I think you'll all remember this if you're going back to your first year at college or, your first year of medical school. Low arousal relates to lower performance, just as a matter of simulation in the autonomic system. Great for relaxation, great to recover, but if we're talking about peak performance, we've got to get a little further to the right. What we have in terms of many of the systems we work with in day-to-day life and living nowadays, because of all the stresses and complexity, is people find themselves way over to the right. Too much stress, either acute or chronic, pushes you far to the right of your optimal performance, and that is not ideal. Sometimes we do it in training just for a little period of time to test capacity, but ideally we want you right here. Really simple stuff. But for us to really take someone who's already best in the world and push them that little bit further, we actually have to even be finer than this. We have to be just to the right of this. We have to put you in a situation, a training scenario, a space where your body and brain is trying to just figure out what's going on. It's a little beyond your capabilities. The most important reason for doing that is that we want to know what your limit is. So if we don't push you far enough in your training or preparation, we don't know what you've got in the tank, so we need to push you just past that point. so that we know what you've got to work with, and we also need to know it so that we can understand your capability for adaptation. Because ultimately, we're trying to get you to that level of higher performance by managing the state. And as advanced as we are with all human technologies right now, understanding where someone is on any given moment and any given time from a neurocognitive and physiological perspective is still the holy grail. No one's cracked that code. If you can manage to understand where someone is along that curve precisely, as I identified in that green, you can present information, you can present training, and you can optimize learning in a way that's profound. Unfortunately, right now, the best in the world at this, great coaches, great trainers, great educators, typically take 10, 20, 30 years to understand by just looking at someone how they're handling things, where they are, how they're feeling today. So that measurement of state is critical. So how do we train it? So I want to give you a few of the constructs. Now, these constructs that we use, again, very simple, but can be applied to very complex and high-performing communities, and it's amazing how many people don't think this way. So the first construct in terms of that curve is to redefine anything that's in front of you in terms of a challenge, a threat potentially, as a challenge. So most people, you know, when they see something that's just beyond their capability, will default to, oh my God, if I don't do this right, or if I fall short, or if I fail, it creates an anxiety response. What's the cause of that anxiety response? The fact that if they make a mistake, they see themselves as failing. So the first thing we do with everybody is to reframe the threat of failure as a challenge. And the simple distinction with that challenge is that no matter what happens, win or fail, win or lose, you learn something. And our best performing organizations and our best performing individuals in the world are lifelong learners, and they understand this implicitly. They know that if they make a mistake, it's just an opportunity to learn something about themselves, so that they can prepare better next time and use that failure as an opportunity for improvement. You hear it in the Valley, you hear it around in the tech communities, the investment communities, fail fast. Who hasn't heard that? It's the mantra for sort of startups. But has anyone actually ever trained people to fail and do it in such a way that they learn? And it's not done very often at all. So how do we do that? Well, what's the number one fear for people in the US and the world actually? Public speaking. So we kind of work with Cirque du Soleil, and we kind of take that concept and add it up a notch. Here you'll see some world-class athletes with some world-class founders and investors going through the Cirque threat versus challenge training.
These are the switch. These are extremes. Laughing and crying. Like we were saying, find your place and find your moment that triggers that emotion and just push it and push it and push it. And then switch. Okay? All right, cry, guys. Cry.
Actually getting up in front of a crowd and really letting go and actually showing emotions, laughing and crying and jumping around, screaming, all these energy exercises and all these different things. I felt like that to me was by far the hardest thing ever.
Switch, laugh! That was close, man!
I won't let it move on, but the point being, it looks kind of random, doesn't it? But you take an individual and you put them in a situation where there is a perceived threat, in this case to their ego, to their performance, you can ramp them very quickly. And we could demonstrate it here if we grab some from the audience right now and ask them to come out here and sing their favourite song. Any volunteers? Unless you're a professional singer, you're going to tack way over to the right of that curve. Now, if we support you and we encourage you and we give you a little bit of background sort of familiarity, you're going to go through it and survive and do pretty well. But this is the idea of what we're doing here. You heard DK say it's the hardest thing he's ever had to do in that video. That was a young gentleman that mentioned that. This is his day job. So we have these profoundly simple tools that can put people in situations where they can learn about who they are and what they stand for. Not very complicated, but it's amazing how even these basic concepts don't have any real understanding in the broader community. The next one is assess versus assume. And again, it's rooted in an ancient sort of biological system, behavioral biological system. If you're walking through the savannah of Africa 50,000 years ago and you hear something rustling in the grass, what's the assumption? snake, tiger, lion, death, something's going to kill me, which is fair. So we're still wired for that. In the absence of information or a little bit of information, what do humans default to? Worst case scenario, fear. What if? What if I don't do that? What if my kid falls over? What if I mess up this surgery? That idea is, again, rooted in an ancient mechanism. So you have to train it. You have to practice it. The assessment piece is when you train someone to look at a situation and not forecast some arbitrary future, but take in the moment, the present information, the situational awareness, so that they can make a better decision. All make sense? So we have some unique ways of training that again. And remember, these people are best in the world, so I don't recommend that's for your average offsite for your staff. This next one is we filled a box on the floor in the basement with a whole pile of snakes. And then we bring the talent in, again, business people and athletes, and we blindfold them and tell them, you've got to crawl through this box of snakes, but you have to be very quiet and calm. And if you're not calm, you're going to get them excited. So see what I'm doing? I'm gearing the whole thing on our side.
For us,
I apologise, it's a little hard to see, but it gets better.
It's actually a tool, it's a trigger. It brings you up, and in many cases you need to be brought up to get ready to do what it is you're about to do.
I knew I was scared of snakes, but I've never actually put myself in a position where I had to be near them.
Remember the two things: slow movements, low stress.
At first, I was doing my deep breaths, and I almost didn't really sink in what I was doing. Apparently, I kind of charged. Everyone else was taking their time, and I just wanted to get through.
It's hard to see, but she's crawling through
my heart rate
the
went
box.
from sitting down beforehand at 37 to 170 while I was just crawling in there. Learning to face that kind of primal fear and having the experience of feeling probably the most fear I've felt and overcoming it, and how amazing that feels afterwards just gives us the confidence to do that again and again.
So you might ask, what's crawling through snakes got to do with anything? She's a world class, actually this was a month before the Olympics in Rio. But did you hear what she said about her heart rate? It's normally at 37, which is pretty low, but she's a triathlete, so she's pretty fit. And then it was 167 when she started to crawl through the snakes. The idea that we come at people with a very obtuse perspective and threat forces them very quickly over the top, and then she has to figure out how to deal with it. And she heard us say there, how does it translate to what she does every day? Well, she's now felt something way over to the right of that curve where she has trouble breathing, very scared, very anxious. She stands at the starting lineup, and this is her words, a month later in Rio for the Olympic triathlon. And this is easy. I've felt way scared, more scared than this before. So these tools actually translate. Again, we use very extreme and fun examples for these young people, but the concept, the principle, is that she should have assessed what was going on versus assuming. What's the assumption? Snake, death, bite. Yeah, it's just worst case. I'm not allowed to kill her, no matter what it looks like in these images. I'm not allowed to put them in harm's way. If she'd actually thought through the situation a little bit as she walked in and paid attention, she would have known, she would have checked on that. She would have also checked that the snakes had plastic tape around their mouths. They're the same snakes they use here in Hollywood for movies. So the snake can't actually open its mouth. And they're all boas anyway, which they don't bite, and they're well fed. So if she'd sat there and actually made those sort of basic assessments, she then would be, there's nothing to go on here. I could just crawl through that thing without problem. But people don't. So the lesson is we're trying to teach them that. If you can reframe a threat as a challenge, which is something you have to practice every day, if you can then take a moment, breathe in, assess the situation versus jumping to that assumption, you're in a position then to respond versus reacting. And this is one of the key messages. If you're not good at this, someone says something to you in that meeting in the office, or your friend, or your partner challenges you argumentatively, the reaction is just to unload. Oh gosh, don't say that. Oh, you haven't been listening, that type of reaction. The response is, okay, what can I learn here? Let's take into account the information around me. All right, what's the decision I can make that moves me forward in a way that supports my goals and their goals? So these are very simple things, and again, you've got to practice them. And the trick is you need to know with people where they are on that curve so that you can do it appropriately. If you scare the living hell out of them, it's going to go way too far over to the right and there's nothing to be gained. So the response versus reaction is the final piece of this puzzle. So here's another group of young athletes and some business people out in the woods. We've had a week of training like this to prepare them for this moment. We're in Montana, I'm giving them a lecture on the dangers of hydration and how they should stay hydrated, and they're bored out of their brain. But little do they know, we've trained a grizzly to come running through the camp at them here in the next 30 seconds.
All right, stop! It's all right. Come on, stop! It's all right. Go run. It's all right.
He actually slowed down because he's such a baby in this band, but he made the point.
What we're going to do is we're going to have easy. Listen carefully because you guys will all be interacting tactilely with him.
That's the look we're after.
Oh.
So you get the point.
Intense weather or whatever may be.
We've put people in situations to train these elements, obviously very extraordinary and fun situations, because part of this is to give them experiences that they never forget. Give them an opportunity to reflect on a moment in time. It's a bit of fun, makes for good TV, something they can show their friends, and it's something that anchors them. But funny, we don't seem to get asked to do much corporate work anymore, so I guess that's just a fact. People aren't happy with the bears. So what's this got to do with anything with respect to what we're talking about today? Well, we know the unknown is probably the most powerful tool for training, because the unknown, giving people less information, challenging them in uncommon ways, in ways they've never been challenged before, so unknown ways, forces people very quickly to have to figure out how to deal with their own emotional regulation. And that emotional regulation cue is the absolutely most critical thing to train to get the best performances from people in the world. So the unknown can be very simple, it can be challenging, it can be done uniquely, it doesn't really matter. One of the things we do with executive groups is if we just turn up in the morning for a big day of work, corporate team building or whatever, we just don't give them an agenda. Just don't give an agenda to the executives, to the C-suite of a Fortune 100, and you watch them unravel very quickly. So this is a group we did about 6 months ago. This is probably 4 of the top heart surgeons in the world from Cleveland Clinic and around the world. Cleveland Clinic hosted us. We came in with the surgical team, and they said, we really need to get these communities working better as teams. So here they are. They're about to go out in the ocean, and we've blacked out their masks. So they've been to the beach 1,000 times, but just taking the mask, blacking it out, forces this experience, and it creates an environment for the coaching and learning. And as obviously we're experts in the coaching, we know how far to push them. So if we start to see people getting a little too high or they're not kind of challenged enough, we modulate. Is it effective? Well, the beautiful thing about this stuff is even though the science and the technologies and all the other instrumentation that we hear about is not quite there or it's just about to be there, these simple things work very, very well. I just grabbed this last night, so I apologize for the quality, but this is a Cleveland Clinic heart surgery, and this is a percentage of delay of surgeries following, the first surgery of the day is on time, but then if they're not going on time, then they just get later and later and longer. So you can see after we did the training, there's roughly a 20 to 30% on-time starter surgeries just by putting people through that experience. Now, forget about the cost savings and the opportunity with respect to an organisation like that, but the idea that simply getting them to think about themselves in a challenging way and working together in that environment forces these sorts of outcomes. So where does that leave us? Well, as we started off the presentation, the idea that there's this ancient mechanism, an ancient system, the human system, that really is poorly misunderstood. And even with the best performing teams and programs in the world, our training still is anchored in very, very basic concepts to allow us to get the fundamentals right. And it has been that way forever. But now, and especially in the last several years, and our next presenter will speak to that, there's an opportunity to take control of that. For the first time in history, we're able to look at the human performance state through a lens of technologies and technology, software and hardware that allows us to modulate exactly where people are on that curve and understand where they are so that we can train them more effectively. And it's based on techniques and tools that are being developed actually everywhere else, but they've still yet to be applied effectively to the human. Here's a friend of ours locally who's just developed this new AI platform. Now, this is a platform designed for a pharmaceutical company to just drag and drop, enterprise-level AI. So you're sitting there on your computer with all this information, and you just drag and drop your data into this system. This is on diabetics research. Stuff that was impossible several years ago is now, due to the technology investment, creating powerful, powerful tools. This is obviously to understand medical and health, but the opportunities for coaching, training, education are just sitting there waiting to be transferred. You can see it's a real-time query. Powerful, powerful tools, which in the past took this particular pharmaceutical company 2,000 to 3,000 analysts 6 to 12 months to do, to scrape through and to get this data like this. So I think it just shows you that these things are starting to come, and why are they important to what we're doing. Well, here's another one, just alone on the data, but to understand some of the research. There's thousands and thousands of research papers out there. Not many of them are actually accurate, but the ones that are really gold mines of information, but no one has time to read them. So a friend of ours, another AI scientist up in the valley, developed Primer AI. He developed it for a military application for tracking down information on counterterrorism. But now it's available for everything. So in this particular case, the machine goes out, looks at the web every day, all the aspects of information that it can gather and scrape together on a particular topic. You just type the topic in. This time it's asking to talk about DNA analysis with respect to CRISPR. And it's just showing you real time how it goes out and starts to write a brief. So it's writing a brief on a topic that you've chosen. And people go, well, great. How good is that? Well, the briefs are about 85% as accurate as human written briefs. So they still need a human in the loop, but what's important is that they are able to actually do the work of thousands of humans in milliseconds to allow the humans then to elevate off that platform. So for human factors, we've started to apply this to the very, very edges of our programming. It's very simple to apply it to real data in terms of performance, how to make someone fitter, how to improve their VO2, all those sorts of things. But when you're talking about creativity and compassion and empathy, critical thinking, these skills that are really the only areas of humanity left to train and practice, because the machine's starting to take all the basic stuff off the plate. Gives us insights into processes we've never had. So we did the same thing using both those previous technologies and applied it to creativity. How do we get all the information in the world aggregated on that topic so that we can use it to improve people's lives with respect to thinking outside the box, challenging different ideas? And this is what it looked like, and there's a whole platform around that. So even the edges of what's possible are starting to be opened up with respect to the application of these tools that are being developed over here for very different reasons and applied to the human equation. And to what end, as sort of to this next step is, well, as I said, the human-machine interface is coming very quickly and it's coming at a rate that I don't think anyone predicted. So the basic stuff of humanity, the jobs that have kept many of us busy for the last few hundred years are going to disappear. But there's going to be a whole new range of opportunities opening up. So that's a fantastic idea to think about with respect to what's possible. If we can make people more human, make super creatives, super compassionate, super empathizers, super critical thinkers. This is the work we're coming together now with the best programs in the world, which is great to make the best better, but what's the real opportunity? Well, the opportunity is to translate this down to education, to kids. globally put it in places where they've never had access to, and start to make a huge difference. And even in sport, where we started at the beginning of the presentation, kids have to struggle through this every day on their own. What would happen if we could make a difference with that respect to that acceleration? So here's a young kid, a friend of ours, going off the first ski jump ever, and just listen to the process they're going through.
I'll be fine.
Have fun.
I'll do it.
You turn up a little bit.
Well, here goes something, I guess. Okay, you can do this. I'm gonna jump.
You got it.
Whoa, my ski's slipping off.
Just remember, never snowplow, okay?
No snow plows.
Keep it straight and you'll be fine. Do
Okay.
the same thing you do on the 20.
Straight. Do you go faster on the in run?
Little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Is it any steeper, do you think? Not much?
Same steepness, it's just longer.
Well, just longer. Just longer. Just a bigger 20, that's all.
Yep. Have
It's a
fun.
bigger 20.
Go ahead. You got this.
I got it.
It's fine. You'll be fine.
Okay. Here
The longer you wait, you'll be more scared.
I go. Yeah!
Isn't that fantastic?
Just the suspense at the top at the first time freaks you out. That's the only thing. It's so fun.
You hear that confidence? The success, that challenge was just at the right point for that particular kid, but they still had to figure a lot of stuff out on their own. There's no need for this to happen without some better information out there nowadays. And imagine that young girl doing her first piano recital, the young boy doing his first guitar recital, same principle. Getting up on stage at age of 10, 11, 12, helping them understand how to take the most out of that situation, learn and grow from it versus physically feeling sick or nauseous or having a very negative experience. That construct of training, which we've mastered at the highest levels of performance around the world, has such greater impact in the youth of today that we need to start to think about how do we scale this. Not everyone can get a grizzly bear to walk in the back of the theatre here right now, or have someone challenge them in a training environment that we create for these best-in-class organisations, because it's expensive. And also costs a lot of money in terms of training to have people, to give people, coaches, instructors, those skills to look at someone without even asking them a question and know how far they're feeling and where they are on that curve to make sure you're adjusting the training perfectly for them. But the big but is now with the machine technology, the AI agents, we can start to actually put people every day in a situation where we can actually look at them real time and know where they are. And there's a school in San Francisco that's actually doing it real time with kids, where the kids are managed and monitored through a sensor suite. As soon as the challenge in front of them, math, physics, language, gets too hard, and they start to feel, start to move to the right on that curve, the machine adjusts automatically the level of difficulty of the challenge in front of them, brings them back, not too far. You want them to learn how to make mistakes, but you don't want them sitting there suffering. So think of that in the communities that are beyond just the school. And that's why this is a powerful slide, because we're starting to talk about how do we take people solving the world's greatest challenges? How do we put scientists, the engineers, the technologists, the sociologists into training environments in such a way that we improve their capabilities, just like we would a Venus Williams or a LeBron James or a Tiger Woods? Again, never before possible until these technologies started to arise. It allows us now, we've done 2 or 3 prototypes of this, we've taken some of the best researchers in the world and trained them like a world-class athlete per se, with respect to those constructs that you have behind them. And to me, it makes no sense why a young brilliant cancer researcher isn't given the same support systems and training back end that we would give someone who plays sport for entertainment, because the outcomes are far greater. And the principles that we apply to these other communities have equally, if not more, impact to people who've never had exposure to them before. It's a new concept for many to get their heads around, but for us, that's the idea of how can we do this quickly and on scale is really the opportunity that sits in front of us. So I know I'm getting to the end here, but one of the ideas we've had and we're starting to build on here just locally is pulling the best minds in the world in the creative arts, the performance arts, the athletic side of performance, and bringing them together on a regular basis to start to think about how do we train these communities. And thankfully, the World Economic Forum and communities like that are now paying attention to this training process so we can start to make real change in the world with some of the fun and games that you saw earlier on. And not everyone will get that opportunity, but I just wanted to come up here today and share you the sort of preface of what we're seeing and the big opportunities in front of us, because I know the next speaker, Amir, is going to start to show you how it actually happens real time. And with that, I thank you for your patience and time this morning. Appreciate it. Thank you.